quick recap. We talked about how to first make a snow cube, icy cube, and so we start out with a blue background. We talked about that. I start out with sketching which is what you did. We sketched out a cube, basically, using any brush you have, but I like to use 6B pencils and just sketch it out. Turn paper often. Here's my hexagon. I form my hexagon. Now I'm going to use something thick to fill in the color, like this. So this is a quick recap of what you were just doing, okay? And I'm just doing it really fast. Oftentimes it's a good exercise to, like right now I'm actually rushing. It's actually a good exercise to practice how to rush, okay? Pushing yourself a little bit towards the rushing side, like at a rushing speed, not too much, but just a little bit rushing, is actually good for your learning experience, because when you push yourself to rush, you kind of have to forget about like getting super fine with like tiny little details. You don't really have that luxury. You just kind of have to go rough, and going rough, my little friend, is one of the key to become a really good artist. Okay, and I already talked about this many times. So I'm going to pick. Now I got white in. I'm going to pick a color. I'm going to pick the background color. Boom, this blue. I'm going to shift it to the white. Somewhere kind of like a quarter of the way towards white. It's like 75% white. So I'm going to paint that in on my side number 2, which is usually the bottom left side. I'm going to make sure I pick the alpha lock, so I don't have to. I could paint to the edge and don't have to worry about going over the edge. Pick this color, fix. I'm gonna fix the edge a little bit. Okay. So I'm gonna pick my side number 2 color. I'm gonna shift it now to about 50% saturation, about there. Okay. Now I think it blends into the background a little too much, so I'm going to bring it back. Maybe about a third of the way. Like this. Boom. Yeah. Okay. Do a little bit adjustment, fixing. My perspective is a little bit off, but that's okay. You can keep on adjusting until you get it close enough. Okay, this is close enough. All right. So the next stage I want to show you is, what does this have to do with clouds? Okay, because a lot of times people don't think about clouds as a 3-dimensional shape, but it is actually a 3-dimensional shape. It has height, width, and length, just like any other object, just like a cube. So, but what is a cube? Even though it looks like kind of icy and snowy, what does it have to do with clouds? So, the way I like to think of it is, clouds are basically like a rounded version of some kind of a geometric shape. Okay, so in this case, I'm taking, I'll show you what that means. If I take this cube, I'm going to make it a little smaller. Okay, cube have hard edges. It's the last thing we think about when it comes to like fluffy stuff like clouds, but there is a relationship. Oh, by the way, if there's any questions, if you're confused about anything, please interrupt me. Yes? Okay, yeah. Even though we're being recorded, you can interrupt me if you're lost at any moment. All right. So I'm going to cut this. Okay. So how does a hard object or an object with a hard surface. These are what I call hard surface objects. or hard objects. What does a hard object have anything to do with a soft, fluffy, object like clouds, cumulos? So I hope this shows you a little bit of a relationship. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this layer, I'll go to my adjustments, it's on this button right here, and I'm going to go down to blurs. In this case, Gaussian blur. So Gaussian is just a way of saying like gigantic, Gaussian. This thing is in Gaussian proportion. That's kind of how you would use it in a sentence, right? Okay, so Gaussian blur. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw from left to right, and see, as it blurs, it kind of turns into that. Okay. If I blur it enough, do you see where I'm going with this? Okay. This is one way of demonstrating how a hard object like this, hard object like this, have any relationship to do with something like clouds. Okay. I guess one way I could explain it is clouds. I think I said something like clouds are basically like fluffy-ish version of some kind of a hard geometric shape. I think that's one way to look at it. It's not the only way, but yeah. But I hope just by doing this, it kind of gives you an idea of how, the relationship between a geometric object like this and a soft, fluffy object like that. They all share some things in common, and I'll try to point them out to you. Okay. Even though they have very different ways, like their edges are very different. This is super like blurry and soft. This is like really hard and crisp. What do they have in common? What they have in common is they all have a side one. Oops. Excuse me. They all have a very clear side number 1, 2, and 3. Okay. They both do. In fact, if I switch them on and off, you'll kind of see the relationship. Can you kind of see that relationship? Yeah. Side 1, side 2, side 3. They're both present in both types of objects. Okay. Albeit the cloud or the blurry guy right here is the edges are a lot more soft and things like that, but there's still a very clear side number 1, number 2, and number 3. And that's really the biggest thing I want to share with you, is that when you're making clouds, cloudy objects, remember that they are three-dimensional shapes, and that because they're three-dimensional shapes, they obey the same shading laws that governs hard objects like these. Okay. Does that make some sense? Okay. All right. So now that we covered that, that's it. Class is over. Good night. Okay. No. So now that we covered that, let's do this. So you take your cube, which I know you have. Okay. And we're gonna basically blur up the cube and mess it up, blur it up, mess up all the sharp edges like these. All these sharp edges, we're gonna soften them. Okay, we're probably even gonna change the shape of these edges in some way, like this. cutting in and out of it, change it, whatnot. And we're going to soften the heck out of it so that by the time we're done, it's no longer a hard, sharp piece of like a cube. But we're going to do this in a way that still obeys the three-dimensional shading laws. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, I guess I'm going to back it up. Okay. Back to this. Let's select my layer. Okay. I'm going to pick some brushes. Now, what kind of brushes do you have to use? I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but I do have my preferences. I'm going to show you my preference. Okay. I'm going to show you what I want to achieve, and hopefully you could do the same. Okay. So I'm going to pick the old brush. I think this is called dry brush. This is called old brush. I'm using Mandarin. Hey, because Mandarin is awesome. It's kicking butt. It's great. Okay. Old brush, and I'm going to play with it. So I'm going to select, I think, this white. Adjust the size. And I'm just going to try to blur up the edges, basically by messing it up. You really don't have to do too much, in the sense of like, you don't have to paint the whole thing like this. Like, a lot of times all you need to do is dabble. Like, I'm just dabbling. Just do enough to make the hard edges, make that sharp edge kind of disappear. Okay. But while you're doing it, pick local colors. Like right now I'm picking colors over here so I can use them around. Okay. So what about this edge? How do I get rid of this edge? Well, yeah, I pick the color over here. Yeah. The brush is interesting. These dry brushes, they will mix in the background color as well. So you'll see that it's actually pulling in some of these blue background that we have, which is kind of cool, actually. But while you're doing this, always just keep in mind, okay, always like kind of pull it back, make it super small to see the big picture, okay? Because sometimes you need to do that. A lot of times I actually paint from like this size right here, because I can see the whole picture. I can see the big picture of what's going on. Okay. Dabble. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So yeah, so that's how it's done, my students. That is how it's done. Okay. So yeah, hopefully this gives you an idea, as you're painting your own cloud-like objects. Like, this is a really good way to get into it, but do it in a way that hopefully you understand, the laws of physics and light behind it. Okay. I hope this helps.